Hey, everybody. I'm Warren Heaton, and welcome to another online version of Digital Media Artists Los Angeles. For those of you that found time to join us, thank you very much. We have some interesting stuff planned and exciting stuff planned for tonight. With us, as usual, we have Ko Maruyama. Hey, Ko. Michael Mondragon, who's set up our StreamYard for us and has this whole thing working. Katie Isabel. Hey, Katie. Mike White. And of course, our guest presenter, Mary Poplin from Boris FX. So, how's everybody doing?
Good.
Great.
Good.
Great
Yeah.
here,
Awesome. And also, before I forget to mention it, our meeting is brought to you by our main sponsor is Adobe Systems Incorporated. So I need to make sure I remember to say that, which I did. And tonight, Mary is going to be sharing with us the newest version of Mocha Pro. But before we cover that, I just want to announce if you happen to visit the Adobe community forums, so it's community.adobe.com, and you check out the After Effects section, you'll see that the featured Adobe Community Professional is somebody familiar, because that's me. So check that out if you get a chance. And I feel very privileged that I was like, wait, what? Cool. And I sent my info over. I wish I had found a better photo to send over, but it's me and Sassy, my little dog. So that was exciting. And what else? Well, Mary, I wanted to say something that when I was looking at the new information for Mocha Pro, and Mocha, that it's supporting After Effects' MFR, or multi-frame rendering, if anyone isn't familiar with that yet. I know there's the Adobe, the MFR is now part of the Adobe public beta. So if you're currently using After Effects and you don't have the beta installed, and you're like, where's this MFR thing people are talking about? You've got to take the time to go to the Creative Cloud desktop, go over to the beta option, and download the After Effects beta. And